This is where you get to ask whatever questions cross your mind. We've got a pretty good panel here. We've been paneling together now for years, and we pretty much have seen many of the questions, but there's always new ones. So we have a very broad capability to answer questions as they come up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. I've tried to get everybody to kind of move over here. If you have a question, raise your hand. If it's on the appropriate, right now, if it's appropriate to the question that's currently been asked, then just give me both hands. And for the sake of the panelists, and you should understand that they do respond very well if you buy them a drink.
Yeah, we'll talk for a little
Truly. We've been on panels before,
cash.
And in the middle of the panel, people have come up with beers. I mean, it's one of those kinds of things. So, but there will be plenty of opportunity to ask questions. We've got a 1-hour session. At the end of the hour, there's nobody behind us. So we'll have plenty of opportunity to get the questions, make sure we got them all covered. In all cases, we do consulting and services and things like that. We're going to be talking a little bit about things that might be useful. If you have business cards, I don't know if we're going to get a lot of people lined up here, but if you have questions, go ahead and put your questions on a business card. Things like that, we'll be able to get back to you. The email addresses that are on the first slide are going to be presented again at the end. So if you want to email folks, follow-up questions, you said this, what about that? We'll be glad to be able to get to all of them. It shouldn't be a problem. What we're going to do is I'm going to have all of the panelists introduce themselves. I'll go first. My name's Bruce Clay. For those of you who have been in SEO for a while, I've been around since 1996 doing search engine optimization. We focus on white hat, which really allows us to cater to large customers. The panel generally chuckles when I say that because they are so
I've been
white
around
hat
since
themselves.
1996 too, and I know.
Yeah. So that's what I do. I have tools, I have training, I do services. We have clients big and small, everything from eBay and Turner Broadcasting, CNN, little guys. So we do everything. Start here with Todd.
My name is Todd Friesen. I'm the Director of SEO at Performics. Formally started out in this business about 11 years ago on that side of the microphone as an affiliate. Sold a lot of Viagra, a lot of phentermine, a lot of diet plans, model cars, you name it. We sold it back then, and now I'm reformed my ways. I'm pure as the driven snow. I do SEO for a large agency that we have bigger clients than he does.
I don't know what to say after that. My name's Greg Boser. I'm a SVP of Search Services for BlueGlass Interactive. We're also a large agency with big clients, and I've also done a lot of aggressive affiliate stuff in my day, and so kind of same kind of stuff that Todd's done. And I'm also reformed and pure as the driven snow. No.
For those of you that didn't hear when he turned off the microphone, he said aggressive affiliate stuff.
Yeah.
I'm Stephan Spencer. I never had to reform myself. I'm the founder of an agency called Net Concepts. I started in 1995, before all you guys. And I didn't start doing SEO in 95. I started as a web marketing agency and been doing SEO for over a decade. And let's see, so I co-authored a book called The Art of SEO, published by O'Reilly. Co-authors include Eric Anga and Rand Fishkin of SEO Moz and Jesse Striciola. I invented a technology platform, an SEO proxy technology called Gravity Stream, which rocks, and Performics has been reselling since 2004. Thank you, Performics. Let's see, so that's about me in a nutshell. Oh, and I sold Net Concepts 12 months ago to Covario. So now I'm off on my own. Did my earn out.
One of the things that I think would help us from the standpoint of questions is I'd like the panel to spend 1 minute, if they could, going down, just saying what they see as the most important item in the next 12 months that would affect SEO and affiliates.
We're all just going to say the same thing.
I know.
Links. Links. I'll answer for Stephan now. Links.
Yeah.
Greg.
Link filtering and localization.
Oh, so you just got fancy with it.
I did get fancy with it.
I.e. links.
Those are the two biggest issues.
Okay, we are really open for questions at this point. So, question. We'll start there.
That was quick.
Speak loud.
Okay, I have a question. We're doing backlinking strategy, and we're wondering if is it a good strategy to submit spun articles from our own original content that is on our site to services such as Distribute Your Article?
Okay, I'm going to repeat the questions because they're recording them at the back. So you're talking about articles and spinning them off, and is it a problem?
Yes, and the submission to using services such as
Distribute Your Articles as a service and others.
I'm not a fan of article spinning. I think, well, I don't like spam, and I think that's a low-quality link, so it's not, I think, good value for money in terms of your time and effort and the return on it. I don't think so. And also, if you're creating quality content and you're creating multiple versions of that quality content that's rewritten from scratch, that's one thing. If you are just using an automated tool for spinning that just swaps in synonyms and things like that, that's not adding any extra value. So I would say that's kind of risky. You're going to be potentially spotted by your competitors and then turned in. There's a Google Webmaster Central, spam submit form that your competitors are more than happy to use on you.
The thing is, with most spinners, I mean, you're just basically doing synonym replacing, and Google's ability to semantically analyze a page is pretty strong. So the idea that simply using a synonym for few words is going to make a difference on whether they can tell that it's near duplicate is probably a stretch in today's environment. So the amount that you have to edit the article to actually have it stand on its own, you end up kind of rewriting it from scratch anyway, and if you're going to do that, you'd be better off paying people to do that for you and submit truly unique versions.
I mean, there's a reality right now that does work. In enough volume, that does work. You will see ranking increases. I'm not gonna pull the wool over your eyes. It does work. But the days, I guarantee you, the days are numbered, and I wouldn't be surprised to see all those article sites come under a lot more scrutiny in the new year. Exactly like these guys said, where do you think Google's "did you mean" comes from? They know what you're looking for. They can analyze all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't do it either. And if you are doing it and it is working, don't rely on that, because it is going to stop working, I guarantee it.
I would think that you're actually putting yourself at risk, developing a profile for yourself, a rap sheet that Google's going to keep, and this infraction may not put you into the penalty box, but this plus 3 other things that you do over the course of the year could be enough to where they nail you for it.
And you don't want to downplay the fact that these sites that your article might end up on link to a lot of low-quality sites, and ultimately that association will harm you.
And
So you
people
gotta be
scrape
real
those
careful.
sites and respin that article and take your links out of it anyway. So basically, you're fueling other spinners a lot, and the links that you're going to get in that content. It all depends on where that article ends up, because you need a link in that article hosted on a site that has solid trust and authority is valuable, but the sites that have solid trust and authority aren't borrowing content from e-zine articles or any of those sites. So,
Second row.
Maybe you could walk me through a white hat link building strategy versus
Right.
Do you use any of those kinds of services, or are you literally just one by one going to sites, manually developing a relationship, or are some of these sites legit? You know, TextLink ads,
Oh, no, let's not throw out names.
Yeah, no names because they're all friends of ours. And
Well, let's let Bruce repeat the question.
This is going to be one of the tests, I think, of being a moderator, is repeating some of these questions. So fundamentally, describe a white hat link approach that is actually going to work, that is scalable.
right.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
white hat and link building, if you believe Google, those things don't belong in the same sentence, no matter how you slice it, right? And link networks, it doesn't mean I agree with them. Stop clapping. A lot of those networks are pretty well mapped out at this point. And I mean, basically, you're buying links, it's not white hat link building. You're using a network, it's not white hat link building. I don't care how you want to define that. White hat link building is putting something out there that will get links on the merits of what it is you put out there, regardless, right? So something that, without the help of other people, does well on Dig or gets passed around on blogs or gets posted somewhere else, content you share, guest posting, those sorts of things are white hat. How well that stuff does is really up to how good you are at promoting it across the different channels. The scalability of that is pretty small because you have to keep putting out unique content and then the manpower behind finding the partnerships and the placement for that content.
Yeah, and we do the thing is, for us, we do a lot of link building for clients, and we have large networks of sites that we have a working relationship with that we can get content published on. And our thing is, the key is that all the stuff that we do is always a new link and a new piece of content. So the data discovery is a big thing with Google now. So the problem with some of those networks is, we went through a phase when everybody started figuring out that links in content are more valuable than links in navigation structures. So brilliant companies like the one that got mentioned started selling links in old blog posts, right? Inline linking was all the rage. And then Google went, I've crawled this page 400 times in the last 2 years, and there's never been a link, and now all of a sudden there's a new link embedded in this. That's odd. That's not how, that typically doesn't happen in the real world, in their world of what they feel is the proper way. So the key thing is, if invest the time, if you're going to use a content service or whatever and write articles and go find good quality sites we do a lot of blogger outreach and guest blogging, stuff like that. Because those are kind of links, if you need that article to be published on a blog people actually read, right? Because the whole review me stuff and all that kind of stuff, these are kind of fake sites. They have a lot of PR focused at the homepage. They have no RSS readers. Nobody actually reads the article. Google knows all that, especially when it comes to blogs with pinging and feed burner and all that kind of stuff. They know what sites are real sites and what ones aren't, and the juice does not trickle down to those pages the way it used to anymore. So a blog post that gets published needs to gain external links on its own. So if you find that blog that is the big power blog, those kind of sites, when they click the publish button, they generate hundreds and hundreds of links every post they write. So those are the kind of sites you want to get your content in, because you're going to get far more value out of that.
So a quick example of a link building initiative that's completely white hat. I was really successful. My previous agency, so I came up with this idea of a contest for a company called overnightprints.com. It was business cards and letterhead and stationery and so forth, printed overnight and then shipped FedEx the next day. So the contest we did in conjunction with Shoe Money. He promoted it on his blog. It was designed Jeremy's new business card, and you could win business cards for life, which in reality is like peanuts, because in the small print it was $1,000, 1,000 business cards per year maximum for up to 20 years. And so I think I have enough money in my wallet to cover that. And so Jeremy promoted it on his blog and in YouTube. It got picked up by a bunch of design sites, and lo and behold, they went from nowhere in Google for business cards to page 1. And this was back in 2009 that we ran the contest, and they're still benefiting from it, you know, many, many months later. There's like number 2 or 3 for business cards in Google. And that's just one example, but the scalability of those sorts of campaigns, well, you kind of have to systematize it. So you come up with an approach where every month you basically repeat the same process where you come up with whatever number, 20, 30 different link bait ideas per month. And they could be anything from infographics, personality tests, widgets, badges, awards, link bait articles, top 10 lists, you name it, right? So all the standard sort of link bait. And you prioritize this list, you work with if you're the consultant, you work with the client to figure out what is most within their comfort zone, because some of the stuff can be pretty edgy, right? So an example would be a life insurance site that ran an article on Dig, 19 things you didn't know about death, and it worked really well, but it's not like MetLife would run that article. It was some no-name site, lifeinsure.com, and they benefited greatly from it. They were on page 1 in Google for life insurance for years. They're still number 3 in Bing and Yahoo for life insurance, and they ran this in 2006 or something. So
God bless Bing.
yeah,
Hooray for Bing.
hooray for Bing. So it just depends on your comfort level and your brand guidelines and so forth, what you're willing to tolerate. The riskier you're willing to be, the larger your comfort zone, the more success you'll get out of this. And so with this prioritized list, you just bang through those, however many you can get through in a month. You have researchers. You can find these guys on Odesk, on freelancer.com, et cetera. And you get different researchers than you do writers, because people who are good at researching, like finding the best beers from around the world, aren't necessarily the same people who write really compelling content. So you probably have to get different people to do this. And you just kind of systematize it and rinse and repeat every month. So.
One of the things we did is with BlueGlass, we ran a experiment on building some infographics. And what we found is if you repeat the infographic on a regular basis, update it, refresh it, publish it, the first time you do it, so many people see you, and so many people link to you, and so many people visit you, and so many people talk about you. When you do it again, there's some recognition for the name. More and more people will come. And if you do it 3 to 4 times, by the time you're doing the 4th one, you're getting quadruple the traffic of the first one for the same amount of effort. So scalability may also be impacted by frequency and repetitiveness of your particular project.
The goal of a lot of this sort of stuff is to become the authority in your space of whatever it is you sell, not just some other website that sells the same thing and offers 5 different credit card offers or 6 of this offer or whatever. Become the authority, and that leads, nicely out of what Bruce just said, where if you're becoming the authority, when you put out that first infographic, you get some traction. When now you're moving towards being the authority, you put out the second updated version. Now you're even closer to being the authority because you've been tracking that information. You're obviously deep in your industry, and you just keep moving forward and moving forward. As you move forward to becoming the authority, the links come along with that.
Yeah, and it's really important that you do not change the URLs as you do this year after year. So for example, CNET, a client of ours, would have this holiday gift buying guide they do every year, and they'd change the URL. Each year it had a new URL. What a horribly bad idea, right? So you want to maintain that link equity
Somebody
year
should
after
get
year.
fired for that.
Yeah. I think we did it, but no, I'm just kidding. So if you keep a stable URL and then archive the content to an old URL, like 2009 gift buying guide, when the new year hits and you're now doing the 2010 holiday gift buying guide, you keep that stable URL that's been accumulating all the links over the course of the time. That's an important distinction.
And the other key thing I would throw in there too is don't be obsessed and focused on exact match anchor text. And that's the biggest thing that we're seeing right now, is that Google's ability to filter on the individual at the query level for sites that are too strong. We have a lot of large clients that did a lot of, more is good, and they just keep pushing, and all of a sudden, they're very authoritative sites even, and they don't rank anymore for 2 or 3 phrases, and they're the phrases where they got crazy strong with the anchor text. And we're actually seeing a lot of stuff as we go through and analyze all this where the sites that are ranking oftentimes don't have the word they rank for anymore in the anchor text at all sometimes. So the idea that you have to wrap your head around is that Google's ability to apply semantic analysis to links is similar to how they do it to content on the page, and they can now more accurately map what they feel should be a legitimate backlink portfolio. So, and in the real world, if you look at sites that aren't aggressively doing SEO, the common thing you'll always see is that the top links in terms of anchor text is always their domain or their brand name, right? And when you see sites where that top link is not that stands out like a sore thumb. And I can't tell you specifically what the threshold is, but I can tell you when you correct it, the cool thing about their new system is that it's very automated. So we've seen sites come back in 2 or 3 weeks after we've gone through and pulled those links back or changed them to brand links. Authority links are more important than anchor text. But brute force is dead, and it's dying, and if it hasn't hit you yet, it's going to. I can promise you that. And so if you have an opportunity to get it, and I always say this, like if I have an opportunity to get a link on Yahoo's homepage or CNET, I would not have that link say Internet Marketing Company, it would say BlueGlass, right? Because the value of that link isn't in the anchor text, it's in the authority that transfers. And if you focus on that first, then what ends up happening when you become authoritative, all you have to do is actually publish, because now SEO for you is more on page, right? So CNET, a lot of these big sites, they can publish a piece of content that might not get any external backlink support, and it'll still rank because the domain itself is trusted and authoritative. That's a longer process. It takes longer to get there, but if you get stuck in this brute force mentality, you'll forever have to go out and build links to that every single piece of content you publish forever, and you just never get over that hump.
These links do not have to be topically relevant to you either in order to really benefit you. So for example, I've given talks at Stanford and gotten links for that. So now I got links from techbriefings.stanford.edu. And, yeah, it's pretty sweet. And in fact, you could do the same thing if you got some really compelling content, because they're looking for really good speakers, and just come in and spend an hour giving a talk and get some nice links. So don't spread that around, by the way. This isn't going on Twitter, I hope, right? Oh, and
Okay.
yeah, I'm screwed now.
You're in
Diversify
trouble.
your link portfolio as well. So, this needs to be a natural link portfolio, not one that's overly skewed in any particular direction. If you have way too many authority domains linking to you in one short sweep of time, and nothing that's like more lower level or bloggy type links along with it, that looks a little engineered. So,
And have you guys seen that Google has this thing, when you do a search, a lot of times down in the bottom left-hand corner, they'll say, it's not related searches, but it says try something different. And what we find a lot is that the phrases that they list there are quite often the backlink portfolio of the #1 site. So if you go look at the backlinks of the people that are ranking for that term, what you'll see is these words and these phrases. So, if you're trying to rank for cheap tickets, you better have links that say affordable airfare and things like that. So, I'd spend a lot of time using semantic tools and figuring out, when you do that, you guys all know how to do the tilde search on Google? You put the tilde in front of the word, and Google will show and highlight other words that they feel are related, and that tool of theirs is dramatically expanding. It used to be just straight synonyms, and now it's really becoming the semantic web, to where they're showing words that are completely related but not necessarily a synonym. And you want to spend some time looking at that information, so when you go out, if you're going to forcefully build your backlink portfolio, that you're taking advantage of that.
Okay, links are clearly a major part of everybody's concern. This was a very, very terse response to that question. First row.
Quick question. We've been SEOing a site on the .net for quite some time. We were just able to acquire the .com for pretty fair price. How do you think we should manage, moving from the .net to a .com and avoiding any of the backlash that we may find from an SEO perspective?
Okay, the question is, you had a TLD, which was .net, top-level domain .net, and you purchased the .com, and you're going to be migrating the site to the .com, and you want to make sure you minimize the penalty.
Did you already change the who is information? Did you, you didn't do any 301 nothing's happened yet?
Nothing's happened yet.
Okay.
Good. So here's another thing. Was the site an established site before? Okay, here's a very important thing you need to do before you flip the switch on that, is you need to go look up the backlink portfolio of the site that's there, because when you flip that switch, you inherit all those links. And what often happens, earlier this year in the fall, we had a client that similar kind of thing, and their actual company name, but for 10, 15 years, this site sold eco-friendly cleaning products, right? And they sold snowboarding gear, right? And so they did the migration, and all of a sudden they have twice as many backlinks and their traffic's down 30%, and they're not sure why. And I'm like, well, look at this search. You rank for eco-friendly snowboards, right? So you are what those links say you are, and when you double your link count like that, you actually dilute the links that you had for the things that you want to rank for. So you need to go through there, and you find, and their idea was like, well, there's good juice, this is an old site. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't really work that way. So go through, take any query that, or any link that they have, and 301 and deflect that away. Like clean that domain up first. What we do is like, we'll 301 those pages to Wikipedia or something, right? So now when Google comes and fetches those later, we don't want credit for those links because they're not really what we do. And we trim and totally prep that domain's backlink portfolio first, then migrate.
So why do you 301 instead of 404?
Just to get away quicker with 404. They'll keep fetching the 404s forever and ever. They're just idiots like that.
And that's a key point that people don't ever think about, is you can manage your links on a link level. If you've got a link you don't like, that link doesn't have to resolve to your domain. That link comes in, you can put it wherever you want it. You can bounce it to.
Other than the homepage, so
Yeah.
that's tough. The homepage has a lot of wacky stuff linking to it. But then sometimes it's going through, and if you are a similar related company, and is contacting those sites and getting them to change to something more appropriate. But you can kind of surprise yourself, and eventually Google figures it out. But you know, this particular company did it right before the winter shopping season, and it was problematic. You know.
Would you say just redirecting from the .com to the .net, leaving it that way, or?
Well, I mean,
I would start building links to the way we've done before. If you want to get real tricky, the way we've done before is we allow Google to continue. We'll put both domains to the same site, and we'll allow Google to continue to crawl the old URL while we start building links for the new ones. But when humans land on it, we serve them. So we start getting some natural new link development happening to the new domain. We want Google to start seeing the new domain first before we crack it open and let them crawl. When we do that, we find that the transition is really, really smooth.
yeah, you never want to just flip the switch. You want to take some inventory, take some time, and manage that.
If you reset all the, I mean, if you change the who is information and the name servers, you know, so the registrant, you're changing the registrar, you're changing your name servers, you're changing the content on the site, and you're 301ing all simultaneously, that's a really dumb idea, because you're basically sending a very strong signal to Google that the site is under new ownership and could very well be now a porn site or an affiliate site popping up, and therefore they should reset the page rank to 0 and
Start over.
negate out all the link equity that had been earned over the years. Yep. So change the who is information slowly. Change, you know, just take your time.
Okay, right there.
How important is it to have the keyword the user is searching for in your URL?
All right, the question is exact match keywords, or at least partial match keywords. How important is it to have the query keyword in the URL?
Well, that's really important now.
I suppose it depends on if you want to rank on Google or Bing, right?
Yeah, it's not as important as people think, and the farther away you get away from the domain, the less important it is. So a file name extension versus a directory versus the domain name. The thing with domain names, and you may have well noticed that exact match domain names in the last 18 months do really, really well on Google. My theory behind that is that in that scenario, that is, you know, how I said that Google's modeling and mapping stuff based on what a portfolio should look like, and your domain and brand name are typically always the strongest ones. So those sites get a pass on that. You can't filter that, right? You can't penalize a site for having too many links pointing to their domain name or their brand name. It messes up the whole process. But those sites only rank for that phrase for the most part. They don't, when you compare them to the other sites in the space, as far as their total breadth of phrases they rank for, it's not even close. So, and Google has told, I mean, they are working to correct that. The comment I got was, yeah, we know it's bad, and because I'm saying, come on, this is stupid, right? Because sites are showing up that have no, they shouldn't even be in the same ballpark as these sites that are in that space, but they're getting so much weight on the domain name that they're killing it. But they're dialing that back a lot now, so that's kind of a short-lived strategy, I think.
Which is unfortunate, because some guys are making a lot of money, and they're going to hate you when you keep pushing Matt to dial it back. In fact, some guys might have a hit on you right now. It depends if
it's a space where it's my clients that are getting pushed out. Come on.
In my particular case, for 10 years, 11 years now, I've owned the domain SEOtools.com. And for a very long time, I did nothing with it other than forward it over to my toolset.com domain. Which was pretty dumb, I think. Then I had a bunch of people offer me a lot of money for it. So I figured if it was worth buying, it was worth building. So all I did was put up 8 pages of just some free tools, just to let it start aging. Within 2 weeks, I was number 8 for SEO tools in Google. Now, that's the only thing it ranks for, but the exact match I consider to be pretty dominant right now.
Well, and type-in traffic too, because you have to remember that Google has this thing called a toolbar, and they pretty much can see what real people do. So I would not be surprised at all if type-in domain, you know, actions with actual users impact how sites rank. If people are directly navigating, because they go, oh, I need SEO tools, SEOtools.com, and they have a Google toolbar, there's a very good chance that information is being factored in some way.
Well, and this probably doesn't need to be said at this point in the life cycle of search, but I'm going to say it anyways. Don't go for a big hyphenated domain just to jam keywords in it. Hyphens are bad.
They actually use hyphenated domains to test their spam algorithms. I asked one time, I was like, I think Inktomy did that study a while back where they said after the second hyphen that relevancy drops off like 89% or something. So the next question is like, well, why don't you just write a filter that just removes any site with more than 2 hyphens? And the response I got was, well, we leave them in there so we can see how good, when we roll out a tweak, we use the hyphenated domains to see whether or not we did good or not, right? And then if you show up, then they go back to the drawing board and work a little harder to try to make those, because those sites are typically so
yeah. Well, we all did that, so we're sorry we broke it.
Just a real quick add-on to what Greg was saying a minute ago about toolbar. So if you think about, conversely, if Google toolbar users are not coming to a site, but you're getting other signals like link authority type signals, but no toolbar traffic, that looks pretty suspicious, right? So Google's looking for corroboration amongst some of these signals, traffic signals, social signals, like whatever, Facebook likes or whatever. So those sorts of things may not actually be a signal per se on their own, but they are corroborating the validity of the signals that they're paying attention to and counting.
Okay, question over here.
Greg, we're talking about anchor text. If you were to look at somebody's link portfolio, what percent would you give to keywords, exact match, branding,
Let me repeat that one.
Okay.
All right, so when you look at a portfolio of inbound links and analyze the anchor text that's used to transfer to your site, the question is, what percentage of it is exact match on a query or keyword rich? What percentage is branded, generic words, some distribution?
I don't think that, I can't really give you a perfect metric for the web as a whole. I can tell you that typically 30 to 60% of links what we see are fall in that category, branded versus domain kind of thing. It's very independent of the space. So the way that we approach it is we analyze all top, whoever's on page 1, and we create an average, right? So we look and say the average brand makeup in this space is 30% or whatever, an X amount, and then we try to target and build based on that average. What we find when we do that is that usually gets you in the ballpark and gets you competing in the area without potentially, raising the flag. So there'll be some sites in there that are stronger that, and some are weak, and you kind of come in right in the middle, and that's so far been the best approach. And when you do that, and especially if you're filtered, so if you have gone missing for a term, I would definitely look at that information. What you'll typically find is a big spike where we got 20,000 links, and and the other thing is links to linking domain ratio. That's a big thing for me, right? Because that's a clear and simple, easy way to spot site-wide activity, and site-wide links always indicate collusion, right? Like people just don't naturally put a link to you in their footer and run it across 20,000 page. So we never ever do site-wide stuff ever again.
And most site-wide stuff, depending on what it is, can be written off as blog rolls and all this and that. So, best case scenario is it's out there and it's not helping or harming. But at the same time, like Greg says, you do need to be paying attention to stuff, where those site-wide links land and what they're next to in those footers and sidebars.
And if you have like several, we get this all the time, large clients that have dozens of properties that they own. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with linking your network together. But what they would do is, put links in their footers, and that's been a common practice. And the way that we like to restructure that is, take your about page, for example, and one page on each site has an about page that says, hey, we're a member of whatever company network, and here's our sister companies, and do it more like a directory with a paragraph of text, and they specialize in, keyword A, so the links out to that site are within text, and you just have one page like that on every site. It's way less spammy, it's more appropriate for the end user because they can read information about who owns your company and what other kind of things they do. And that one link on that one about page on each of the site is worth far more than the 50 billion footer links that you would get doing it the other way.
When you're link baiting, what you can just kind of leave the blogger community and linkerati to use their own anchor text, and you get that natural diversity just by happenstance, right? So but you want to kind of influence that to some degree. So when we did this contest with Shoe Money, we didn't call it Rebrand Shoe Money Contest, right? That would have been really dumb. We called it Win Business Cards for Life Contest, because then people are going to use that anchor text. Most likely they're going to use the contest name or some permutation of it in their anchor text or their links. So we can influence that way without it being too artificial, because we're not specifically dictating which anchor text they use.
Okay. Question there.
Yeah, just to go along with that, if you are put on blog rolls, and they have site-wide do follows, will you be penalized at all if it happens often?
Well, there's two things. Number one, in most blog rolls, it's not a targeted generic keyword phrase. If you're doing that, that could be problematic, right? Google's never going to penalize you for your ranking for your blog name or your personal name, right? So Jeremy will always rank for Shoe Money because people put Shoe Money in, right? That's not an issue. Does it have a ton of value? If it's a good authoritative site, sure, it's not bad to be on a blog roll. But you see guys doing it all the time. It's like, hey, here are my friends, Blue Fuzzy Widgets and Buy Viagra and payday loans, right? That's stuff like that. If you're doing like that, then that's just
It's guilt by association.
Yeah. Well, and that leads into how Google maps link networks. I mean, pick your link network that you're buying into or your link building company, and you go look at where you're buying into, sort of hidden sponsored link sections and stuff. If you stop and think about it for a little bit, you go into the network and you buy 1,000 links for Buy Viagra. Somebody else has bought 1,000 links for Fuzzy Blue Widgets on 30 sites, Buy Viagra lands next to Fuzzy Blue Widgets. On 80 sites, that lands next to Milk Chocolate Candy. On 40 sites, and that lands, you know, and you can correlate all this stuff back to these common sites seem to all be next to each other on a lot of sites together all the time. And that kind of spells link network. But blog roles and brand names and that kind of stuff, you know, Google knows what footer sections are. They know what sidebars are, and they ignore a lot of that stuff to start with.
Yeah, no, we do in our internal tools when we're looking for link inventory and all that kind of stuff, and we're pulling backlinks. We don't just look at the anchor text of the backlink that we're interested in. We also log and look at what other words are in the other links on that page, so we can spot if a backlink's coming from a page that also has terms on it that would fall in that high-risk area. So you don't ever want to be on a page that has a link that says Viagra unless you're selling Viagra, right? It's just bad neighborhood, and it's a very easy way for them to discount total value on those sites.
And it is possible to tank competitors' link authority by buying dodgy links.
It's really possible now with this new filtering stuff, but that's another topic.
Yeah.
Does it matter if whose information is public or private during the ranking?
What's the question again?
Does it matter whose information, if it's public or private?
Okay, so the question is the registered, visible who is information, if it's publicly available or you're hiding it or private it. That information
I
doesn't
don't
matter.
think so.
No, I don't think it matters, and quite frankly, if you think that's the one thing stopping Google from connecting all your stuff together, you're sadly mistaken.
Yeah.
They're significantly smarter than
And
that.
they are a registrar themselves.
And
Yeah, they're a
they are
registrar.
a registrar.
Yep.
No,
And
Google
you
gets
can,
all
that
that
hasn't sold a
stuff.
single domain.
Yeah, registrar that never made a nickel off.
and you can even find out if historically, if your actual name was ever associated with that domain. Just go to domain tools and look up the historical who is, and you're still there. So.
I'm just interested in whether or not, while I'm considering investing in creating widgets that have a pretty high refresh rate of content,
Mm-hmm.
pretty compelling content, and just wondering what I might think about in terms of best practices in one of these widgets.
Okay, so the question has to do with the development of widgets and a best practice from an SEO point of view.
That it gets back to that anchor text thing. So I'll tell you a quick little story, a little widget story. There was this very smart young kid who worked for a big SEO company I'm not going to mention, who made all kinds of cool gadgets and contests and cool things like that. And they gave away this widget, and he had this dating site, right? And they started giving away the widget, and then the widget got really popular, and his content was very compelling and cool, right? It was not, but they started putting in like online dating, and so they started dropping the anchor text in the widgets, and now all of a sudden they ramp up, they're ranking really well, and then they went, wow, this is kind of cool. Maybe we should, put some other links in there for people or whatever, right? So they got crazy with it. And, at the beginning of every year, I always ask Matt, like, so what's your focus for this year? And he'll come out, and like, that was like 2009. He's like, 2009's the year we kill widget spam, right? It's getting out of control. And so getting back to that authoritative thing, if they would have just put the name of the website, powered by, they probably wouldn't have shot up as quickly for those phrases, but over time, they'd be there now, right? And it's a little longer term haul, but those widgets would have created and built authority. So if you focus on them for that purpose and just get rid of the idea of a brute force thing for anchor text, you should be fine, especially if you're putting out good quality stuff that people are going to run on their sites.
Well, it doesn't hurt. He kind of wrote a tell-all about it.
Well, yeah, then he did that too. He wrote a post bragging about it, and that's even worse, right? I'll never, ever do that. Never, ever write anything about how good you're doing on Google, because they don't like being publicly embarrassed.
One other thing about widgets, a lot of these widgets are built in Flash, and that's not going to really be fantastic for SEO purposes.
We talked about this in the last session, and I've actually talked to Bruce's team about it a bunch, but I just could never get over it because I feel like I'm kind of talking out both sides of my mouth. But bringing in so much revenue that we need to continue doing it. And he said, well, it's a risk, but you're right, it is effective. And so we just kind of left it at that. He didn't agree with it. Well, about a year after that, we got slapped with a penalty on that phrase. We went from number 3 on average to page 50 for that phrase. And
But not other phrases.
what'd you say?
But not other phrases, right?
Not other phrases, just one phrase. And so what I'm kind of getting to is, so we got it resolved very quickly. I talked to Matt, Bruce talked to Matt, they went in.
Said you're sorry, fell on your
said we're
sword.
sorry,
Yeah.
we're not paid linking. And you know what? We don't do any paid linking now.
Mhm.
I mean, unless you want to count the Yahoo directory and business.com. We're not doing any, paid linking outside of that. But I really struggle with this, what Stephan was just talking about. I'm in an industry there's hundreds of millions of dollars on the table.
Mhm.
And I'm not VC funded.
Right.
So I'm doing it on my own dime, and everybody else is doing it on $55 million of Sequoia capital.
Mhm.
And so, why don't I just go out and take, t-shirt phrase of my choice and just blast them with paper post blogs and everything else? I'm willing to spend the money to
Tank
get
them.
these guys off these phrases.
Well, here's the cool thing about that is, and I totally agree that the biggest issue has always been with the paid linking and focusing on whether money's changed hand that's been unscalable for Google is that they can't catch everybody. And I've never been a fan of ratting on your competitors. They don't do it, except if we're at a client and they have been doing paid links and they get caught and everybody else in the space is doing it too, then we respectfully request that they take the time to look at this whole space, because now they put us in an unfair competitive advantage. Like you just can't do that. You can't take out one and not everybody, because, and my thing to clients has always been, if that's working, that's fine, but at the same time, we need to work on all other stuff, because when they do come in with the flamethrower and torch the whole space, the site that ends up coming out of the cloud of smoke is the one that wasn't relying on just that, was doing the other stuff as well. So you always got to do both. But now with this new filtering, it's actually a less punitive system than it has been in the past. I don't think they really care whether the link is paid anymore, right? Because now they're just looking at volume of anchor text. And what's really interesting about it too is they're no longer scolding the whole entire site. So one of the things that we're seeing a lot now that's very intriguing to me is that we have a client in a very large, and they're very old site, very authoritative, and they went missing for their main phrase. And before they were cliented us, I looked, it's like they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, a lot of links, but they still rank. They still dominate the space in all the other related terms, but the money term that the boss has said we need it, that converts the best, they don't rank for that. What Google does now with their localization filtering on that search result page in some cities where they used to rank for the term that they bought the links for, Google now shows a page from their site that talks about that city in its place. So it's almost like they're saying, we've got this really great site, we really want to show it to you, but they've been bad for this one term, so here's plan B. We're going to give you a secondary choice. And it's not as good as a search result, but they're not penalizing the whole domain, they're not making judgments on it. It's completely algorithmic, and it gets them to a point where they don't really care whether all those links came because you paid for them or not. The fact is they're too many, and you're going to get dinged for it. But once you fix it, it comes right back. Like, you don't have to file a report. You don't got to say you're sorry. You just clean it up, and in a month or so or whatever, it'll typically come back once you get it.
Well, and that's the thing. We didn't actually clean anything up. It's kind of like we just, obviously Bruce Clay has a great reputation. I know that played a part in getting it removed. But, once the thing was removed, the penalty was removed, we're right back up where we were. Now, I do have kind of my own theory, and I don't know if you guys think this holds any water, but we've done public relations work with really, good firms. And when you have a good PR firm, they are submitting to wires, but the real work that goes with PR is you got the connections to the right people in the
Yep.
media. So they're telling us, hey, I want to let you know part of our SEO strategy is we're submitting you to all these great places. You're on CNET, you're on this and that, and you are. You're buried in the site, but we were getting thousands of links that did absolutely zero for us. So
Yeah.
my main theory is that most of the time, lots of links from places that aren't really all that valuable pretty much just amounts to zero.
Yeah, they're just discounted, right? They don't
Yeah.
have value. I mean,
Yeah.
my thing is, I think there should be a law that PR people shouldn't even be able to say the word SEO. That's just
Yeah.
my own personal.
Well, and I mean,
take on
and
it.
the other thing you have going for you in a situation where you were penalized, or at least on a per link basis, is as you keep moving forward, building links and doing things properly, eventually you hit a dilution point again where that automatic filter goes away. I mean, those per query, per keyword penalties aren't done by hand. They're done algorithmically, and there's
At the
thresholds.
time of search.
Yeah, and there's thresholds to all that kind of stuff. So as you keep going, you can dig yourself out of some of those holes by adding more valuable links on top of it.
And see, the upside of paid links is that when you do get in trouble, they're a lot easier to remove, right?
Yeah.
If you get a large volume like that some other way, you can't always take them back. And so that's a situation where, that's a little longer haul, but that's when we switch clients to full-on brand and domain linking strategies only. And we just try to get that number back in, because it's not the total volume links, I think it's a ratio kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you can dig your way out of it like that. It just
Well,
takes
and that's a
longer.
situation too where you can start bouncing links away, 301ing them over to Wikipedia or that sort of thing.
Just a bit of inside information on how Google works with these penalties is there are manual and algorithmic penalties, and the manual penalties Matt Cutts and his team and so forth have visibility into, but the algorithmic penalties they actually can't see. It's
It
pretty
just
interesting.
happens.
So they can't actually say that, oh yeah, you are being penalized right now. If it's not a manual penalty, if it's an algorithmic one, they don't know.
It just happens.
Is it fair to assume, though, that if it's just one specific phrase, that it was a manual penalty?
No.
No, I wouldn't
No,
assume
and
More
that at all.
likely it's algorithmic.
And that's the thing, because see,
One specific phrase is probably algorithmic. If it was a manual penalty, those guys like to swing a big hammer. And if you're not going to be generally not manually penalized.
like if
for
your
any
whole
specific
site's showing up
phrase.
at 50, but you still have site links, see, they think that's funny, right? So like, hey, you're authoritative, but now you're at 50, but you got the full-blown site link listing and stuff. That's just being jerks. But that's when you know, that's a full-blown. But I think the days of that being done is coming to an end. It's just not scalable for them, and this system really works way better. They don't got to pass moral judgment. It just happens. And we had this client that sold some products that are very popular in the month of October, and they went, and they're the big dominant site, and they went missing for that key phrase, and they had gone out and through their sister sites in the footer had put that phrase, and I started working with them right when I came on BlueGlass in October. First thing we did is I said, hey, call those guys up and just switch it to your domain name. We didn't even take the links down, we just changed the anchor text. By PubCon, of course, after that particular holiday, they were back. Cost them millions of dollars, but they were back. And we didn't have to call anybody and say we were sorry.
One prominent Googler told me that they don't like to play whack-a-mole. So that's a really good way of thinking about it in terms of manual review or manual penalties. It's not, as Greg said, it's not scalable for them, not in a way that, they'd prefer to write an algorithm that figures out how to just wipe out a whole swath of these guys.
Now, this filtering thing
simultaneously.
is based on so it usually starts with a manual penalty, and then they go back and try to figure out how to do it algorithmically. So around 2008, I don't know if you guys are in the ticket broker space or anything like that, but this is when they really first stepped out on this slippery slope of actually penalizing the advertiser that bought the link, as opposed to, it used to be they just try to devalue, find the sites, and make that juice not pass, but that's really hard to not scalable. And so it was before March Madness, and several of the top ticket companies had gone out, and they'd all been chasing each other and buying links on blogs, and all of a sudden they all vanished for any term that was in the anchor text of any of those links. The rest of the site ranked fine. That was a manual thing, but that process is what ultimately, with caffeine and that whole thing, turned into this automated system, I think.
Okay, there's a question there that's been there for a while. Can you recommend a strategy for a 2 million page
Just
large site?
Like
Just
real
a general
pages,
SEO strategy?
Real
Real
pages.
pages.
good content.
Really?
Wow.
Cool.
Good for you.
I think we found the only 2 million page site on the net with real content.
How's the site doing now? I mean, like, what's your issues?
It's like we're doing so good, I don't even know where to start.
So, like, okay. But are they bringing you traffic? So the first thing we want to look at is volume is not what it used to be.
Yeah.
So back in our day, earlier days, we used to
Volume
do.
was great.
We used to have a separate company that ran this kind of like an internal indexing tool that we would crawl client site, and we would power their search results, and then we'd spit out related searches, and we'd generate, you know, an extra 200,000 pages, and they'd get a crap load of traffic, and we'd drop our affiliate cookie on it, and it was great. This is awesome. And that's the whole thing, blowing out a database so you can generate a ton of, and that was the idea, is that the more you have indexed, the more traffic you're going to get. It's not really the case anymore. It's more
That
about.
was back when internal linking was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, we had a client that, for some reason, Google thought they had 4.5 million pages, and it was great. So we just dropped a text link on the bottom, like in the footer, for all the top products, and we ranked overnight. But I think where Greg's going is crawl efficiency.
Crawl efficiency and database performance. So one of the metrics that we look at a lot is what percentage of your pages are producing organic search traffic compared to the number indexed. And if that's way out of whack, then we actually remove pages from it, like we trim it down, right? So I'd rather you have 100,000 pages where 80,000 of them are generating search referrals than have 2 million pages with that number being that low, right? Because now Google's crawling and wasting their time on stuff that they're never going to show. And so the more efficient you make that crawl, and the more that they're crawling stuff that they're going to want to return, overall we find that the site just seems to do a lot better.
Piggybacking on that concept, we had in our Gravity Stream tool a non-performing pages report that would show the top non-performing pages that are not they're in Google's index, not driving a single visitor though from search for that entire month, and then we would prioritize that list. So we sort the list by crawler activity. So the more hits from Googlebot, the higher up in the list it would be. So presumably, if it's getting quite a lot of traffic from Googlebot, it has some equity or has there's some importance there in the eyes of Google, and should be low-hanging fruit. Perhaps it's just not targeting the right phrase. It's an industry term instead of the terminology that the users use or whatever. And so that sort of reporting, I think, is really, really valuable, and I find that most folks do not track that sort of metric. Another thing, speaking of the internal linking structure, if you were to create a keyword to URL map, so instead of going from URLs to keywords, which is what most people do, right? So they take all their inventory of content, and for each URL, they determine what the major keyword theme is for that page, or several keyword themes, whatever. Go the other way around and start with your keyword portfolio and then match pages to that. So say, these are all the keywords I desire to rank for. Some I'm ranking for, some I'm not. And these are the top pages that would perform, we think, for each of these different keywords. And so let's say hotels in Bangkok is a term that you're targeting, and you have 5 different pages that could correspond to, that could respond to that Google query. They're reasonable enough content there. So then you would determine which is the best candidate to rank of those 5 URLs, and that's the one in your keyword to URL map. And then you would, I wouldn't do footer links or sidebar links, but in some fashion you would rejig your internal linking structure so that you'd have this alternative navigation scheme that would be added to your existing navigation that would reflow PageRank or link equity within your site, so that on a very fluid, ongoing basis, you would change this stuff out so that the anchor text used would be the keywords that you're targeting in your keyword to URL map, pointing to the URL that's associated with that keyword, and then you would, I'm not here, and you would then track your rankings and the performance and all that, see how it's doing, and if you're happy with the performance and you don't need as many of those links, you can reflow some of that page rank elsewhere, and so you keep it very fluid and change these links out and so forth. That can be really powerful if you have a large-scale website.
There's a theory running around right now too, based on the May Day update, that it isn't about your your internal linking as far as hierarchy goes. It's about clicks from the homepage. So you have all these, you may have 2 million pages, but 1.5 million of those might be 6 clicks away from the homepage as far as a hierarchy. And if it's not that close to the homepage, it's not that close to the #1 page where people enter your website, then how important is it really if you've got it buried that deep for people to find? And so there's been a lot of discussion around that. And I can't say for sure that I have any evidence of it, but there seems to be a lot of anecdotal evidence running around that, if you're 5-6 clicks away from the homepage, those pages aren't popping for anything anymore, which is why in the Mayday update, everybody lost piles of long tail traffic.
The closer you are to an external link source, the better, right? So
Yeah,
if you're one click away, that's much better than 6.
You always want to be within any page of content that is valuable from a ranking standpoint. You want to be within 2 clicks of a page that has great external link support. You'll see that in directories all the time. PR bar goes blank as you go from, and so that's an issue. One thing you can do that's just pretty easy little thing is take your list of keywords and just start doing site colon queries on your own site. So you're restricting Google. Google kind of show you in order what pages they feel are the best match. So even though they wouldn't show that page against the whole web, if you restrict it to just your site and you type in blue fuzzy widgets, right, Google's going to rank 10 pages from your site and show you, and typically the ones that are closer to the top would be the ones you'd want to focus on as far as optimizing and bringing higher up the food chain so they get seen.
Now, I know everybody's going to find this hard to believe, but it's 4:30.
Wow.
So there's a couple things. At the beginning, I mentioned bring up business cards, bring up questions. These are the email addresses of the panelists. And we're totally okay with continuing to answer questions if you'd like to come up. That is not at all a problem. Some of us are giving away things. I'm giving away copies of my tools. Some of you may have white papers. There's all sorts of things
Stephan's
that are
giving away his
appropriate.
pants.
Yeah, I'm giving away business cards.
Some of us are accepting beers. There's all sorts of different things we can do. Please join me in thanking the panel. Come on down.
Really got to pee.
How you doing, man? Good to see you again. As soon as you put your hand up, I was like, I know that dude. He sells t-shirts. No problem.
Got a question. Thanks, guys.
You bet, man. Hi. It's rough, dude. Lost 5 pounds, though. It does, but I want to fucking beer so bad. Not as much as I wanted. I actually felt ill.
Yeah, I would go through that, take that phrase, pull the back things on all 10.
How are you?
And start looking what those ratios are at, dialing them in. And then we have our own internal tools, but we pull from like Majestic and SEO Moz, we dump all that in, and then we, yes. We're doing a lot of link audit work these days.
Come by and at least say hello. Yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah, so I need to get new cards. But
Yeah, man, I've been there about 4 months now. Love it. It's a great gig. It's really good. Director of SEO, so I do
That's where I would start looking.
sales, all that, whatnot. But I got a flight in like an hour and a half.
Especially if you're
Get to stick around.
still seeing
Yeah.